Hey everyone, and welcome to my new tutorial. In today's tutorial, we are going to create this. Before we continue, I want to mention that you can access the project files of this tutorial and every other on my Patreon page. This type of tutorial fits under the second tier membership. And without further ado, let's go. Here I am inside of Adobe After Effects. First of all, we're gonna create a new composition. I will name this Instagram Story Animation. We'll set it on 1080 by 1920, 30 FPS, and this story is going to be 10 seconds long. Hit OK. First thing I'm gonna do here is import pictures that I have. So I will right click, new folder, I will name it Pictures, just so it's a little bit organized. Let's see here, import 4 pictures that I have. The second thing, I'm gonna click on this window right here, hit Ctrl R on my keyboard to open up the ruler, and I'm gonna create a couple of guides. So I will zoom in just to see where the edges are. You will see later why. I'll make one guide here, second guide here. Let's see if it's connecting. Okay, it is. And the third guide is going to be on this side, like so. We can hit Ctrl R to remove this. You can go View and Lock Guides, just so you don't click on them. I will fit this up to 100 again. And we can hit Ctrl semicolon on your keyboard to hide them, or you can go to View and Hide Guides here by unchecking this, just so they're not bothering us. First thing I'm gonna do is press on the rectangle tool and create a new rectangle. It doesn't matter what size it is at the moment, because we will go here to the contents, rectangle and size. We will unlink this link. So what do we need? We need 1080 divided by 2, because we need half of the screen. So we get this, and we will have 1920 minus 400 here. Now I will make sure to hit V on my keyboard to select this selection tool, and I will make sure to show guides so we can snap this rectangle to them. Now I will make sure that the anchor point is set in the middle, because we will need it later. I will do that by hitting Ctrl Alt Home on my keyboard to set it in the middle. So I will hit Enter to name this Left Rectangle. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is find the fill effect. I'll type in the fill, make sure my layer is selected, double click on it. So we get this fill, we can animate it for our color changing rectangle. Now I'll make sure to hit on the stopwatch next to color, so we animate the color. Press on my layer, hit U on my keyboard to open up only this property where it's keyframed. Now we will position our time indicator at, let's say, 2 seconds and 9 frames, and I will make sure to move this keyframe there. Now I will hold Ctrl and press the right arrow to move only 1 frame ahead, and I will change this color to the second one, which is the orange one that we have. Hit OK. Now we can hit U on our keyboard again to minimize this, and we can do Ctrl D to duplicate this layer. We will rename it and call it Right Rectangle. Now we need to make sure to position it on the right side. You can see how it snaps. Make sure that snapping is enabled. Now that we've finished setting this up, we can actually hide these guides by hitting Ctrl and semicolon. Now what we need to do here is revert these colors. So I'm going to select the right rectangle, hit U on my keyboard, and make sure to position our time indicator on the first keyframe and change the color to the orange one that we have. And now when we move on to the second keyframe, we will select the white one. And that is going to be our animation for flipping colors. Here, if we play this, you can see it changes like this. Now the next thing we're gonna do is insert our first picture that we have, that is, let's say, hamburger. We're gonna put it in and make sure to place it in the middle of the left rectangle. You can see how it snaps to that anchor point that we have. So we know it is centered. Now before I do anything, I'm going to pre-compose this by hitting Ctrl-Shift-C on my keyboard or right-clicking and setting it on pre-compose, and I will name this picture 1. The reason that we're pre-composing this is for like any future changes you want to make. Maybe you want to add some different pictures. You can just enter this pre-comp and change the picture, and every animation is going to change. Now that we've created this, we can click on the left rectangle, let's say, press U, and then click on this layer and press P on our keyboard to open up the position property. Now we want to make sure when to animate this. So we will probably need to move this hamburger to the right side at the time when they flip colors. So I will go to the last keyframe here, and I will move 10 frames left. So I will hold Ctrl-Shift on my keyboard and hit the left arrow. So this is going to be our first keyframe for position. Now I will move 20 frames right by holding Ctrl-Shift and pressing twice right arrow, and I will move this hamburger to the center of the right rectangle, just like so. You see, it snaps. Now we will position our time indicator in the middle again, select both of these keyframes, hit F9 on our keyboard to make them easy ease. We need to make them smoother so this animation looks better. While these two keyframes are selected, we're gonna enter the graph editor. We're gonna zoom in a little bit, right click here, make sure the edit speed graph is selected. We will select this handle and move it, let's say, here. We need to make sure that this is on the center. Now we will select the left handle and we will move it down around here, because this is where the color change happens. We will hide this to see how it looks like. Let me zoom out a little bit. Now it looks smooth. So we can minimize this by pressing U on our keyboard. And now we're gonna enter some text. You can go here to the text tool, or you can right click new text. Now I'll double click this. So we type. Now we need to edit this text a little bit, so make sure it's positioned above the right rectangle. I will hold down Ctrl Alt and press Home just to center the anchor point. Now I will select this text, make sure it's centered in my right rectangle. And now we can mess around with this text. Let's say I want to make this a bit bigger. So let's say I will put it on 90 and this on 90 as well. I will make sure this one is 90, like so. I could have actually just selected all of it, but never mind, we will do it like this. I think this looks good. Make sure again that it's centered. Like first you need to center the anchor point and then everything else in the middle. Maybe we can scale it down a little bit by hitting S on our keyboard. We're gonna open the scale property and we're gonna make it, let's say, 92%. I think this is fine. 92% looks good. We actually don't need to animate this first text at all, because as we saw in the beginning, there is no animation to it. So I will position my time indicator on the color flip. I'll select the first layer, the text layer, and I will hit Ctrl-Shift-D on my keyboard to split it. And I will remove this upper text that we got, so we can minimize this now. Now we need to add the second picture that's coming in. We can import, let's say, the fruit salad. We're gonna place it above the right rectangle. We will make sure to position it on the left side here. Now we will pre-compose this one as well. So we will hit Ctrl-Shift-C on our keyboard and name it picture 2. The next thing we're gonna do is select the picture 1 layer, hit U on our keyboard, find our first frame. Actually, we can scale this salad a little bit, so I will hit S on my keyboard here and I will make it, let's say, 107. I will make sure it's centered again. Yeah, this looks fine. So we will make this picture 2 come at this position. Now I will position my time indicator here and hit opening square bracket on my keyboard. That way you can make the beginning of the layer position itself on the time indicator, or you can simply drag it around if you want. I will make sure to copy these two keyframes and paste them here by hitting Ctrl V on my keyboard. I will hit U to see if they are there. They are. Now if you look at this image, it's coming together with the hamburger. Now we have the issue of picture number 2 showing above the picture number 1 on the left side. We need to actually crop out the left rectangle completely. So we will do that as it follows. I will select the left rectangle and hit Ctrl D to duplicate it. I will rename this to M left. This is like matte left. So I will position it above the picture number 2. I will make sure to select track matte. By the way, if you don't see this, you can open it right here, expand or collapse the transfer controls pane, or you can right click somewhere there, hit columns, and you can find here modes. I will make sure that this is alpha inverted matte left. Now if we look at our animation, it looks like this. Now we need to animate our rectangles again. Now I want my images and my text to stay there for around 2 seconds. So we will position our time indicator at 4:10 or 4:09, if you will. And we can select these keyframes, Ctrl C to copy them and Ctrl V to paste them. I'll make sure to zoom in a little bit. I will right click them, keyframe assistant, time reverse them. And we can do the same thing for the bottom ones. I will time reverse them. If you want to make this look a little bit better, we can come here, position our time indicator on the last keyframe on picture 1, hold Alt on our keyboard and hit closing square bracket just to make sure that this layer is ending there. Now we need to make sure that this bowl of fruits goes to the left. We can do that by selecting these two keyframes, Ctrl C, copying them. Make sure our time indicator is positioned here on the flip again, and we can move by holding Ctrl Shift and pressing the left arrow 10 keyframes on the left side. And now we can Ctrl V to paste it, and now we need to select these two keyframes like so, right click them, keyframe assistant, time reverse keyframes. So we will get the animation in reverse. But before proceeding, we forgot to add the text on the left side, which we will do now. So right here, when this flip happened, we need to have our second text popping up. So right click here, new text, and I will double click it so we can type. I will make sure that my selection tool is selected, Control Alt Home to center the anchor point. Put it in the middle of this rectangle. Now we see that our text is a little bit big here, so I will select the last line of text. Make sure it's around 40, let's say. Maybe this is still small, maybe 44. That looks good. We'll make sure it's a little bit closer to the other text by setting this leading. Again, I'll make sure my selection tool is selected. Control Alt Home to center it and center it again in the middle. Now I will select this layer and position it below picture 2. Also what I'll do next is position this text to begin on the time indicator here. Now also one thing that I've forgotten, you actually don't need to do this, but if you want your whole composition to look neat, you should set labels. So I'll make sure my matte is, let's say, yellow, text is fine, actually everything is fine now. I'll actually position this layer below picture 1, and now we need to animate it. So I will actually hit P on my keyboard, hold Shift and press T to open up position and the opacity properties. Now I will hold Control Shift and hit the right arrow. I'll click on the stopwatch to create 2 keyframes, go back to the beginning, and I will position Y, let's say around maybe 810, and opacity to 0. I'll select all of these keyframes, F9 on my keyboard to easy ease them. Open up the graph editor, zoom in, make sure the speed graph is selected. Select the right side and move this handle all the way to the left. So that way we get this text animation. Now this text will end on the next flip, that's what we know for sure. So I will position my time indicator there on the next flip, Control Shift D to split the layer, and then we can remove the upper one. I will hit Control A on my keyboard and hit U twice just to minimize all of these keyframes to see what we're working with. The next thing we need to do is add text to the right side and add image. Let's start with the image. I will click on picture tool, hit U on my keyboard to see where my next image will come. It's on this keyframe. I will add, let's say, cola or coke or whatever you want to call it. I will position this above M left. Now we can make sure that this is centered like so. Also, we will pre-compose this one and name it picture 3. Now I want to scale this up a bit, so I will make it, let's say, 114. I will select these two keyframes, make sure to hit opening square bracket, position the beginning of this layer on the time indicator, select the layer, Control V on my keyboard, hit U to open the keyframes. Now what I will do is make a duplicate of the M left. We can leave it on left 2 and position it above the picture 3. Make sure that we select picture 3 and use track matte to alpha matte. Now this way, the coming picture will show on the left side, as we can see here. Now we can actually just copy this layer because that's the text we had. I will position it here and make sure it's beginning on that side. Now the next thing we're gonna do is animate this text as well. We could have copied the values of the first text and change it a little bit, but we will do this on our own as well. I will hit P on my keyboard and T to open these two properties, move 10 frames on the right side, hit stopwatch to put the keyframes, go back to the beginning, put this on a 0 and make sure this is 810 if I remember correctly. Select all these keyframes, F9 to easy ease them, go to the graph editor, zoom in a little bit, make sure the edit speed graph is selected, and move this handle all the way to the left. So that way we get the animation for the second text, actually the third text. Now the next thing we need to do is animate another flip. So we will select the right and left rectangle, hit U on our keyboard to open their keyframes, and we can position our time indicator here. We can see it was on 410. So now we will go to around 610 and 69 because that's when it's beginning, and we can select the first two keyframes, Control C to copy and Control V to paste them, and on the other one as well. So we get the flip animated again. Now we can position our time indicator there. We can end this layer right here. Now this is our picture 3. I will select these two keyframes, Control C them. I will go to the left side, 10 frames, Control Shift and the left arrow, Control V to paste them, and I will right click keyframe assistant, time reverse keyframes. That way we get the picture 3 going on the right side again. This is where we need to import our last and final picture, which is going to be juice. Position this here, pre-compose it, Control Shift C. We'll make this picture 4. Scale it up a bit. Let's say 107 as well. Seems about right. Maybe a bit more. 110. Yeah, that's good. We will make sure to hit opening square bracket here. This is the arriving point of this layer of this picture. I will select these two keyframes from the previous one and paste it there. Hit U on my keyboard just to see them. Now we can see that this image is going to come here. We can actually position our time indicator on the last keyframe. We can move this picture a little bit to the right because of the ingredients here. We can see that this orange, these leaves and whatever, so it looks centered. Now the next thing we need to do is block out the left side like we did previously. So I will select the M left layer, Control D to duplicate it, place it above the picture, and make sure this is alpha inverted matte. And we've basically finished with animating pictures. Now the last thing we need to do is add a text. So I will position my time indicator on the flip. I can actually see what time this is. It's 6:10, so I will hit Ctrl A to select everything, hit U twice or 3 times on my keyboard to minimize all of this. I'll make sure to zoom out, and I've already made a copy here. You can hit Ctrl D to make a copy of the text layer. I will place it below picture 4 and position it by hitting the opening square bracket on the beginning of this time indicator. Now I will drag this all the way to the end because this is our ending text, and we basically got the full animation. And the last thing we need to do is add the up arrow and the button shop now here. Now I'll make sure my selection tool is selected. Zoom in a little bit on this area. I will hit Ctrl R to bring back the ruler and Ctrl semicolon to open up these guides, or go view and show guides. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is drag a guide up from the ruler, place it there, make sure it stays there. Now I will select the pen tool. Now I will create a point anywhere in this area. I'll select this point and position it on this guide. Now while holding down Shift, I'm going to create another point, let's say here, and then I will click back on the guide as precise as possible. Like so. We can zoom in and see if it's accurate. It is. Now I will select this shape layer that I have, make sure to disable the fill, and we will enable the stroke. And stroke is going to be around, yeah, I think 10 looks right. Maybe it's a bit too much, so we will make it 8 pixels, maybe even less, like maybe 6. Yeah, 6 looks good. I will hit Ctrl R to disable the ruler, Ctrl semicolon to hide these guides. Now select the selection tool again, fit up to 100. Actually, I'm gonna zoom in. I'm not gonna fit up to 100. Make sure to select the shape that we have. We can see our anchor point is centered already. Now we can align it to the center of composition, and we can move it up a bit while holding down Shift. And there goes our carrot. It's called carrot. Yes, this thing is called carrot. Next thing we need to do is create a button here. I will rename this layer by calling it carrot. Now we can create the button. We will go here and select the rounded rectangle tool. I'll make sure no layers are selected, and I will draw one rectangle around, let's say, this size looks fine. I will open the contents, rectangle path, roundness, and I will amp this up as much as possible, like so. We actually don't need stroke on this guy, so we will disable stroke, enable fill. This button, yeah, it can be white. We'll call it button, make sure it's selected, Control Alt Home to make sure that the anchor point is in the middle, and we can align this to the composition, like so. We can move it up a little bit. Now the next thing we need to create is the text inside of this. I will Ctrl A on my keyboard to select all of it. Hit U 3 times. The next thing I'm going to do is right click New Text. Double click it. I will type in Shop Now. Make sure my selection tool is selected. Move it down. Control Alt Home to center the anchor point. And we can center it to the button that we have. Change the color to, let's say, this orange. We can actually make this a bit lower, let's say 40. And there's our button as well. We can fit this up to 100, and this is our full animation that we made. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope you learned something new, and I will see you in the next one.